Welcome to the first episode of the Unvarnished Edit, where two friends talk about what it's actually like to live an adversity filled life. Be prepared to laugh, possibly cry, and swear along with us. Hi.
Hi, I am Jaelene, and I am nervously excited to be here with you today. I am probably like a little more than halfway through a lifelong battle with the harshest inner critic, which means I have spent a majority of my life in some form of personal development project made up by myself. I am in recovery from drugs and people pleasing and returning home from prison, probably in that order. I have 4 kids. I spend a ton of time reading, researching, learning, overthinking. They say that your priorities always show up in your bank account and your calendar, which means my priorities are therapy and coffee.
Oof, I could really use a coffee right now. Hi, everyone. I'm Angie, and I'm so glad you're here. I've spent 5 decades living several lifetimes, it feels, in one. I'm a trauma survivor, and I'm in recovery, not just from alcohol and opioids, but what I fondly refer to, we'll just combine it all, is recovery from myself. Through my work and life experiences, I've learned the hard way of how our history unfortunately leaves its mark on our bodies. When I'm not diving deep into the science of adversity and resilience, I'm actively trying to break the cycle as a mom to six, 4 biological and 2 bonus, and lots of others that have come along the way, right? And a very proud grandma. So excited about that. So lots of kids around here.
So there's going to be lots of
A
parenting
lot,
conversations.
because we just can't separate that.
Probably the biggest part of my identity, I would say, is parenting.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think I've tried over the years not to make it the biggest part of my identity, but my children don't let me.
Yeah.
And I may have actually set that precedent.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like once that precedent is set, it's really difficult to not
Yeah.
follow that precedent. Our adult kids, like my adult kids get offended. Like,
hmm
what do you mean?
Yeah. When you want to like
Mhm.
do your own thing or not be as involved.
Answer their phone call.
hmm
No, seriously, my oldest stopped talking to me for 2 weeks, like, it was a couple years ago. I was in the middle of literally personal crisis, and I could not talk on the phone, and so I didn't answer his phone call twice.
hmm
I texted him saying that I was busy because, of course, I can't just let a
Right.
phone call go unanswered because then the mom anxiety is like, "Oh my
Massive.
gosh, that was probably the last chance that I would have ever had to talk to him because, like, this big, huge thing is gonna happen." And he didn't talk to me for 2 weeks
Yeah.
because I didn't answer his phone call.
Which is like so illogical. I wouldn't talk to you, so you won't talk to me. I
Right.
couldn't talk to you. Couldn't.
Right.
Yeah.
But everybody else gets passes for that,
Yeah.
and he'll full on as, "Well, you set the precedent."
Yeah.
It's kinda like how I told them, like, when they were in school, if they would get C's in a class that I know that they could get A's in.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that was that lesson that came back to haunt me as a mother.
I know we
Yeah,
don't think
that's
about it
all.
at the time when we give advice of how it's gonna circle back to us when we're older. They're
Yeah.
holding us to a very high standard. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, should we dive into what we're doing here, why we're doing it?
Yeah.
We thought that maybe in the beginning it would be good to get to know us a little bit, but also understand, or at least try and understand, why we're even doing this because there's a million podcasts in the world.
Yeah.
What will ours do for everyone? So, we have some questions. I'm going to start. I'll ask you a question and then we can both answer and then we'll just kind of go from there. So the
Yeah.
first one is when we decided, when this came up, I kind of said to you, I'm thinking about doing this. And you said, let's do it together. And it was like the first time in a really long time that both of us have had like a full body yes of like, yeah, yes, let's do this. So why do you want to do this?
Honestly, a lot less scary to do it with somebody else.
Yeah.
There are very, 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 very few people I trust in this world, and you happen to be one of them. And so it was like, yeah, and besides that, you and I can talk forever
Forever.
and about all different kinds of things. And I think you and I know a lot, especially in the adversity and the resilience space.
hmm
And I think the way that we talk about it is really different than the way that most people talk about it.
Yeah.
And so it was like, yeah, let's do this. And you and I left to our own devices of saying that we're going to start something ourselves is way less likely to happen
Yeah.
than you and I being accountable to each other. And honestly, I thought it would be something fun instead of all the just heavy to-dos and that kind of stuff that we have. So that was why it was a yes for me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that. I've been thinking about this for a long time. I think that there's not enough women who have voiced some of the things that we're going to talk about. But I also think, like, I listen to so many podcasts, and resilience and adversity is a huge topic in all of them. And there's so much to learn from people out there. But I think that we're hearing so much from people who are really successful and maybe have a lot of resources, right? And that doesn't mean that their adversity is any less relevant than ours. But I wanted to hear more about people who are struggling, still struggling, have to figure out resources more so they're less resourced. And I thought that that would be something really interesting. I love stories. I love telling stories. I love hearing people's stories. And I think the times that I've learned the most have been from people who have like serious grit and have had to like MacGyver their way out of a situation. And I think I just have wanted to add more voice to that. And to be able to do it with you, who I feel so safe talking about my past, right? Because you probably know more about me than anyone because
Same.
we've been through so many of these things at the same time or in friendship, right? In parallel in friendship. And so it takes like the anxiety out of talking about some of the really difficult parts of life, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's why it was just a really big yes for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. And I love the MacGyvering it
Yeah.
way. Cause yeah, we've been in all stages. Resourced life,
Mm-hmm.
financial support system.
Yep.
I mean, like you name it of where it has been. So yeah. Okay. So the next question we have is who is this for?
Mm. Who we
Who's our average listener?
We've talked about this, definitely probably female heavy, right? Because we're going to be
Mm,
talking a lot about that unrecognized, unpaid labor part of life that typically falls on female shoulders, not exclusively. Parents, I would love for some young individuals to kind of hear some of the things that we're saying because I feel like when I was younger, especially a really young mom, I didn't have guidance that was actually helpful. I had a lot of guidance, but it was not. But I do see like a lot of women in our stage of life, right? Who are like, yes, this is what it was like for me, and it wasn't okay, and giving voice to that.
Besides what you said, I think anyone who's really struggling with like this shit is hard.
Yeah.
Like life is hard. And you don't hear many people who are like, yeah, this is hard and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, I feel you. Like, let's sit in it. Let's talk about how hard it is.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's all like, yeah, yeah, like
Mm-hmm.
you can do it. And I want to tell those people, like, fuck you. And for people who really aren't afraid to kind of hear really uncomfortable, hard truths. We live in a really hard time right now. We live in a very different timeline than we've ever been in before. Also, being comfortable hearing things about stages of life that maybe you're not in yet. We're in our later stages, more commonly referred to as perimenopause and menopause, which never got talked about when we were younger at all.
Nope.
And now, as Gen Xers who have never really been quiet about things, are like, what the heck? Like, why isn't this conversation being had? And so I think there's going to be some of that. What does that look like in the terms of kind of what roles we all play as
Yeah.
well? Yeah. And so I think, for the men who will be listening, no, kudos to you, right? Like, literally kudos to you. Like, my sisters and I just talked yesterday about, how one sister, her husband is like, "You're the only person in the world that feels like this." And my other sister, her husband is literally following women who talk about menopause on Instagram so that he can be educated.
Yeah.
And those yeah, we thank you, and we're
Yes.
grateful that you're here, and honestly, we like the opposite perspective every once in a while.
Every
Not
once
saying
in a
all the
while.
time, because 'cause we're gonna be honest.
Yeah. I don't think my
Like,
husband should
every
listen to this. I don't think I'm gonna let him know where it's at.
no, I literally just
No.
let my husband know what we were doing today because he kept asking questions, and if he hadn't asked questions, it would have just stayed at, "I'm recording some
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
in there."
Bye.
Yeah, I love you a lot.
Yeah. See you
Yeah.
later. No, I love that. I think I would love it if it was like a generational perspective, right?
Yes.
Love that. Okay.
Yeah.
What would success look like? Does success in this space look like for you?
Say if people can feel seen, that would that would be success for me. Like, if somebody's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
I'm not doing this by
I'm
myself,"
not
because I
alone.
think, like yeah, like, I mean, you and I have been friends for 22 years, and we've always known no matter how if there's time and space in between things, right, that we could always, like, catch up. But we've also felt very alone in a lot of our
Yeah.
struggles because it took us a long time to get to the point of really like, no, this is really where I'm at, honestly where I'm at.
Honest.
And I think the natural go to, especially when we're talking to younger generations, is that you are the only one. If you talk about it, people are going to be like, I don't know if I actually understand, if I
Yeah.
actually feel like. And so I feel like for me, having other people feel like they're seen,
Yeah.
maybe that there's a little bit of hope in that kind of space, that would be successful
Yeah.
for me.
I think I have a couple metrics. Like, obviously, that's primary. What you just said is having anyone say, like, oh my gosh, when you said this thing, or when I heard this, that really clicked for me. Because I know I can pinpoint very specific times in my past where just hearing something on a podcast or in a TED talk or in a book, just one phrase has completely flipped my life. Right. So I feel almost like a responsibility because I have so many of those little nuggets to be able to share them outward. I really am into building community right now. I'm seeing what's going on in the world and I'm hearing so much about people feeling isolated. And I want to be able to be impactful against that, right? Where I can at least help some people feel like they have a connection, whether that's in a digital way, in a virtual way, in person, stuff like that. I also would love to learn more, right? I'm like a lifelong learner, and I think hearing from other people and some guests that we might have and things like that, I would like to learn some stuff. I'm also on a very ridiculous personal quest. I'm starting my third full year of EMDR, which has been incredibly difficult. In my first session with my therapist, we were just kind of getting to know each other, and I told her that one of my big concerns that I had at the time heard that EMDR was very helpful to people who have experienced trauma, and I was concerned that I would heal so much that I would no longer be funny. And this was like my one of my biggest concerns.
Love you. Gosh, I
And
love you.
I am this is a very serious worry for
Yeah,
me
yeah.
because my sense of humor is like a huge part of me. And the feedback that I get from so many people in my life is that I'm able to add levity to situations and just kind of release the tension, right? And what if I can't do that anymore? Like, I'm serious. And I know when you go through EMDR, your personality becomes more basic, like more you come back to your sense of self, I guess, where you ought to be. And I'm still trying to figure that out. I'm like in the process of, okay, what parts of me are actually me and what parts of me are adaptations to things that have happened in my past? And how do I weave those together and still feel like a transparent, authentic person? And so this is part of like that journey for me. I hate that word. This is part of that experience for me is what avenues and in what ways can I explore myself more?
I know. You're always gonna be funny. There's naturally
Yeah.
a wit about you.
Yeah.
And yet, does our adversity and trauma tend to make us go to the dark side of humor?
Yes.
Abso-freaking-lutely.
Yeah.
Abso-freaking-lutely. But yeah, I actually don't have any doubt that you will still remain.
Thank you.
still
Thank you.
remain funny.
Thank you. I need that validation.
Oh, I love you.
I know.
I absolutely
I
do.
show up to trauma therapy and my first concern is will I still be funny? Not how am I going to handle all of this? What's going to impact
No,
me? Right?
absolutely.
It's like
No, like, what
will
am
I
I gonna change?
yeah,
Yeah, I don't wanna lose this.
right. Because the trauma made me funny. What happens next?
Who knows? You were probably funny to begin with, and they were like, "Ooh, this is we know how brain science works,
Yeah.
right? That
Yeah.
if the path of least resistance is where it's gonna take." And so
Yeah.
you're naturally funny, and so it was like, "Oh, now I've also learned that I can use this
Yeah.
to cope." And so we just made the pathways stronger.
Yeah. That's true. That's a good point. Good point.
Mhm.
So yeah, there's a
You'd have to
couple.
be serious for a really, really
Ugh,
long time in order to reprogram that part of your brain.
that's true. It is a pretty deep neural pathway at this point.
Mhm.
Yeah, it is my default
Yeah.
response.
Which is a really good transition to the next question, which is, what experiences do we have to speak to the kind of different topics we have in mind for this
Mm,
project, and making sure that we acknowledge that both of us are long, I don't want to say sufferers, but
we have a
from the camp that we have imposter syndrome, right? Like we don't have the
yeah,
credibility to talk about the things that we are talking about, although we have the lived experience of the yang
yeah,
when it comes
yeah,
to not only adversity and trauma, but the resilience and the grit that it takes to get through the adversity,
yeah,
and the byproduct, the resilience of being able to make it through and kind of get through that space. Honestly, for both of us, it goes all the way back
yeah,
to the beginnings. Unlike, I think, some people who have experienced a lot of childhood trauma, we have also had a lot of it in our adult lives as well. And so the messaging that we have received is that life is full of adversity, right? And it's hard for us. We've had conversations of just how hard it is to feel joy because it's so different. And
yeah,
that joy was like a very dangerous feeling, to the point that we don't even know how to
yeah.
experience it. Like,
Very
what
hard.
is it? What do you mean? Like, what does it even kind of feel? And then besides that, we are, like Jaelene said, just lifelong learners. We do this in our workspace. We do this in our personal space. We do this in our parenting space.
Pretty
Yeah.
much.
From, substance use disorder, all kinds of process addictions, DV in some of our past, and then our, kids struggling and experiencing some of the same, having it in spouses, having it within families. We just have a lot. And you would think, and of course, her worry going into therapy is she not going to be funny? Like, there's plenty of material still.
I love that. Like speaking to like the imposter syndrome and how do I feel about putting myself out there as like, hey, I might know something about this. That's always hard for me. I think I've finally come, and maybe part of this is just reaching middle age, right? I've finally come to feel like, okay, I have like this huge bucket of lived experience of just a ridiculous amount of things that have happened in my life. And then also this huge amount of professional experience, and then sort of like this third category of tons of therapy, tons of reading, tons of listening, tons of learning. And I think finally all of those things are starting to intersect to a point where I'm like, yeah, you know what? I think I might know a thing or two about how to get through something really tough, and
Yeah.
some resources or some self-care or regulation. And then when you and I started working together in a professional sense, that's where a lot of the brain part comes into it, right? The brain science and the science of adversity and dysregulation. And I think that that final puzzle piece of like, I know what the solutions were for me, but then that final puzzle piece of like, no, those solutions are actually for everyone. And it wasn't just me realizing that if I do these things, my brain feels better. So I'm going to try to live in the yes, I do know a little bit about what I'm talking about while also staying open to, but I can still learn more about it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Once I learned, for me, it all started as a kind of personal journey of trying to figure out what the hell was wrong with me,
Yeah.
realizing that nothing was wrong with me, that my body was responding exactly how it was absolutely designed to respond to the stressful situations, understanding the brain science behind it, understanding the science of, how we're set up as a system was so, I don't wanna say freeing because that's not really the word, but it was so powerful and impactful to me that it was like, "Oh, there's legitimate biology behind this."
Yeah.
Like, why doesn't everybody know that as humans, we are literally designed this way? Our stress response is this way to keep us safe, to
Yeah.
keep us here. And I had learned all that becoming a polarity practitioner and learned, but that was still under that kind of like woo some people have of like, oh, you do body work when it comes to energy and trauma. But my lived experience and the lived experience of so many others that are taking it was like, no, this is real. And
Yeah.
then having the kind of science behind it and being able to really kind of merge like these are the facts. This is literally where it's at. And honestly, it's the foundation of absolutely everything that we do. Like absolutely every response that we have, every reaction that we have, that's all foundational in our stress response system because that's how our brain is designed. And wanting other people to know that as well.
100%. It's like that thing I said earlier when I feel like an obligation with everything I've learned and everything I kind of know
Mhm.
now to share that because knowing my brain and my biology better helps me manage myself so much through the day,
Yeah.
through the week, through a problem where
Mhm.
it doesn't feel like it upends my life anymore when stress comes in.
Mhm.
Whereas up until a couple years ago, stress coming in, first of all, was like, duh, no kidding. Of course, I'm stressed or something bad's
Mhm.
happening to me.
Mhm.
But it was also just like the end of my capacity, like I couldn't handle. And now I have so much more tolerance for stress and what comes into my life. And I'm so much more even keeled when adversity does show up. And I don't think it's an of course anymore. And I don't think it's because of my life choices anymore. And I had that perspective when I was younger and would love to be able to give that to someone else, if that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now we'll get into some more personal Q&A. So I'm just going to pick a random one. Do you have a motto or saying or sort of a default mindset that you come to when life gets hard?
So, honestly, like my first thought to this is, "Oh, do I?" And my second thought is, "For fuck's sake," because honestly, that is literally the first thing my brain goes to. Like when
Yeah.
things get hard is just like, and for some reason, for what that does for me
Mhm.
is I like
Mhm.
recognizes that I don't feel too happy about this, but it is what it is. But the next thing that comes is always that motto for what it looks like when it gets hard is this too shall pass.
Yeah.
Even though I'm in recovery, I did not do the 12 steps. It was just not my jam. However, a couple of the sayings, like "this too shall pass," has been a motto. Like, this too shall pass. It'll be one more thing on the list and possibly the next podcast episode at this point,
Mhm.
maybe a chapter in a book at some
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
But there is an ending to it. It's not forever. And
Yeah.
that always helped. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We're right at, I haven't talked about this. This is not part of this answer, but you and I are right at the it's been 10 years, probably almost to the day, since you took me to my first meeting. And I think we were looking for
I
an
took
end.
you to a meeting?
I asked you to because I had to go. It was right when my addiction came out. Everybody found out about my addiction, and I needed to go to an NA meeting more to satisfy the people in my life than to satisfy myself at the time. At the time, that's how I felt. And I don't think we could find an NA meeting. And so you said, well, and I told you, I said, I've got to go. I'm in a lot of trouble here. can't go by myself. I'll never go by myself. And so I think we ended up at an AA meeting on ASU campus. And I remember that we were in the car driving there, and I was so upset. I mean, my life was falling apart, like seriously falling apart. And I just told you, I said, well, I just don't know. Am I ever going to feel better? Am I always going to feel like this? Is everything going to feel like I feel right now? You were like, no. You were like, shame cannot live in the light. And what we're doing right now is we're going to a spot where someone's going to shine a light on it and it's going to feel terrible, but you're not going to feel alone anymore. I think about that all the time. And so it's been 10 years. That was in January of 2016. And I know right now we're in February of 2026. And so I think about that a lot, about shame and how it can't exist, right, when it's shared. That's one thing that I think about a lot. I think in the same way as you, of like thinking, how your motto kind of leads you to recognizing that there's an end to this. I always immediately go to like worst case scenario, huge catastrophe, end result, what's this going to be? And I've had to learn to just do the next thing. So that's kind of always been my motto, is just do the next right thing. Keep doing the next.
Yes.
I'm sure we'll get into this in the future, but when I started to become impacted in a criminal justice way for my past actions, and I was going to court and I had just all of these things happening, I remember I was walking to court one day and I knew it was going to be a really bad hearing. I knew bad things were coming for me. And I was with my family and we were walking, and dad was really upset. And I just said, you know what? We just have to do the next right thing. Like, let's just go in there. And the next right thing is to show up, take what's handed to me, and just don't look too far ahead. And so that's kind of always how I've had to scale it down for myself, because I immediately go to end of the world, right? I go to the conclusion
Mm-hmm.
and I go to the worst possible conclusion. But sticking with like the
Mm-hmm.
next right thing has really helped me a lot.
Yeah, same. Like breaking it all the way down of like, I only have control over this moment in time right here. And I don't even have control of the whole entire moment, but I have control of like how I'm going to
Me,
proceed and how I'm going to process and how I'm going to respond to this. And all
mhm,
I can do is just choose to do the next right thing.
yep,
That's it. That's literally all that is in my control at this moment.
yeah,
And yeah, because the big is scary. And most of the time, it's wrong.
yes.
Most of the time, it's wrong.
We're terrible
Right.
predictors. Terrible.
No, right. We're gonna go to the worst thing that is probably not even a valid thing.
Yeah,
Like when I do presentations on that and like on, where our minds are gonna take us, I always talk about this story because my husband still to this day will like bring it up every once in a while because it was so ridiculous to where my brain was. So we have off-grid property and it's like 9 miles off a dirt road. And back then we didn't really have good cell service up there. So it was like only on the road could they get it. And my husband knows that he needs to check in with me when he's up there because, hello, I need to know that you made it there safely. Like
yeah,
that's just the thing. Well, both him and my son were both going up there at the same time. So there was two people who knew that just one of them needed to just say, "We made it safe." That's it. We
that's
made
all.
it safe. They did not do that. And I totally get it. They're in their thing. They're talking about whatever is going on. And so it has now been 1 hour. Now it has been 2 hours. Now it has been 3 hours. And our other agreement is every 3 hours we check in. So now not only did you not check in when you first got there, it's now been 3 hours past that. I've not heard from either one of you. And so that is the point that my brain is given permission to like really worry
Yeah.
about
So
things.
obviously they're
And
dead.
so, yeah, so it had to come up with a scenario in which both of them went down at the exact same time. Because honestly, not plausible that if one of them went down, the other one would not have contacted me,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
like they both had to go. And so it was like, okay, so like were they digging in the ground and they hit like this gas pocket that
Hmm.
like knocked them both out? Not even remotely a
No,
possibility.
no.
Like, brain, why is that? Why is that something that's even on the table for thought?
Yeah.
And discussion. So yeah, our worst case scenarios are typically
Insane.
100% wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, not even possible.
Not only are we terrible predictors, but very often when we get through something very challenging, we look back and say, I'm so glad I went through that. I have learned so much. So it's like we shouldn't be afraid of it because our history tells us it's worth it and we've learned something. But also, we're never right about what happened. Somehow, in my friend group here and where I live, I've become like the divorce whisperer. Like when someone's getting divorced, like if I have a friend who has a friend who's getting divorced, they're like, I know a lady you should talk to. She'll make you feel better about this. And so I always tell them the same thing. Whatever bad thing you think, it's bad things are going to happen. This is going to be very hard. You are going to have very low moments and you're going to have moments of like, oh, I'm so glad I did this. But you have no idea. Whatever you think in your mind right now is going to happen is not coming. Just let it go that something bad's coming and it will be hard, but it's not what you think it is. So just press forward and find out what it is. And then my second piece of advice, in case anyone listening is getting divorced, is buy a lot of paper plates because doing the dishes is too much when you're getting divorced. What I tell everyone, go buy disposable dinnerware and use it for the foreseeable future. Cut yourself some slack, lady. But yeah,
Yeah.
we know what's going to happen. We never know.
No,
We
we
never
don't.
know.
And even though we may be grateful for it after we go through it, like that's a whole process as well.
Yep.
Because going through it just suck it
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times. Yeah. Having processes of, okay, so when can I worry? Also my kind of go-to when things are hard.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to tell myself I can't worry at all because well, one, that's unrealistic.
Yeah.
That's never going to happen. And two, we all need an out. Like when things are truly hard, we need to give our brain an out. Like it's okay to break down. It's okay to, and we're going to do it for this long.
Yeah.
But we can't do it for any longer than that, right? Like
Yeah.
we can use disposable plates for months
Yeah.
if we feel like it. Yeah, but when we're getting into the years, that's something that we need to look
Yeah.
at.
We might want to
You know,
start washing dishes.
like having some kind of timeline
Mhm.
to it.
Yeah.
Because when you're in the middle of it, it does feel like it's literally going to be there like forever. And you're never going to, one, get through it because there's always going to be something else that comes around, or two, ever feel better. And that's just a lie. That's just a lie.
Thank you for joining us today. If this has been impactful for you, please like and subscribe and share with someone you think needs to hear this. We will be back next week with part 2 of our Getting to Know You episodes.